And with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Frampton to the show. Dr. Frampton, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. It was wonderful to be here with you.
So I thought where we'd start is, do you mind defining person-centered care for us and maybe tell us how you arrived at person-centered care, your journey to person-centered care?
Sure. I would say person-centered care, that term and the concept is one that has evolved, continues to evolve. When I first got involved with this, it was really more about advocating for patients who didn't have a voice. And so it was actually referred to as patient-centered care back in the 70s, 80s, early 90s. And we ended up moving to person-centered because we realized this concept is truly about a partnership between patients, the family members that they might want involved in their healing journey, and the clinical team. So it wasn't just about being patient-centered. It was really about recognizing everyone's role and also everyone's humanity within those roles that affect the healing of an individual. Now, for me, I got into this because as an anthropology graduate student, I was working in the inner city in Hartford, Connecticut, and ended up in a role advocating for families who had children with sickle cell disease. And one of the things I recognized very early on is that there was such a power differential between the people in the community that had these pressing needs and the way that the system worked to kind of grind them down, to disrespect their role in their own healing journey. And so it was a natural for me to think about how can we take advocacy to a broader level, not just for the individual or the patient, but what are all the different things that influence that? And what attracted me about the Planetree model, because I've spent the last 24 years being involved with Planetree and the Planetree person-centered care model, was that it took that broad approach. It looked at many different aspects of the experience of human beings in healthcare environments and said, what can we do to foster connection, human kindness and caring? How can we use, for instance, the physical environment to support those things in ways that perhaps haven't been done in the past? And so I think we've come a long way over the decades since, for instance, Planetree got started in the 70s to do just that, to look at all aspects of a patient's journey, the journey of their family, of their care team, and found some rather effective ways to partner with them to make it a more human-centered or person-centered journey for them.
I want to kind of double click on the physical environment changes, particularly, you were at Planetree for 25 years. And so I'm sure the technology and design, aesthetics changed a lot, but I'd love to hear more. You mentioned the intensive care horseshoe design. I'd love to hear more, stories or anecdotes where hospitals did make these changes and you saw really, incredible results, whether it's lighting or other design features, or you mentioned artwork, maybe it's fractal artwork, but would love to hear more about what you saw over your career there.
Sure. And again, I'll go back to, there are many, many examples. I'll go back to the one I know best since my office was in this hospital for quite a while. So I talked about the hospital U-shaped ICU designs. The other thing that they pioneered, which has been adopted by many hospitals, but not all, I think more to do this, were double beds in their OB area. So that women who were having babies at the hospital could have the partner there with them, and the partner was welcome to stay overnight with them. And that was kind of a eye-opening idea. Certainly we had been welcoming men in labor and delivery for quite a long time, but often they were sitting on some uncomfortable chair overnight with their partner, or they would go home because it was so uncomfortable. So they said, why don't we have big beds, just like at home. And it was wonderful. People loved that. Families loved that. It was a very thoughtful thing to do. And now some hospitals have done that. Others, I think there's been an interesting design in recliner chairs, very comfortable recliner chairs where someone can either sit at the bedside with a hospitalized loved one or recline at the bedside. We've got pull-out couches now that then tuck back in. So we've done a lot more around welcoming family so that the emotional support that people need can be there. The other thing that they did, which again, people were just like, oh, how can you even do that? They took their staff kitchen that was right up on the wards and they opened them up. They turned them into family kitchens. And you would walk into this little kitchen. It could look like the kitchen in your own home. And families were encouraged to cook for their loved one and to bring them their meals. Or as a patient was ambulatory, to come into the little kitchen dining area and have a meal with their family. Again, going back to that traditional, really awful hospital food. And again, a lot of this was based on research, on underpinning research. So it's research done years ago that found that patients were more malnourished when they left the hospital than when they went into the hospital. So trying to address that, the connection to the natural environment, we've mentioned that's so important. There are so many ways now that we see that being integrated into healthcare environments, whether it's larger windows looking out on human garden or atrium built within the hospitals or the healthcare structure. So this is not just for patients and visitors, but for staff, that you're walking by planting and natural light and water features.
And so clearly we've got an aging population. And I'm curious if Planetree is doing any work or thinking about the kind of aging in place concept, and what people should be thinking about as they design spaces, where they want to live for the next X number of years and start to age in place. I also selfishly, we're designing a 62 plus, a 92 unit building in Washington, D.C. And we're working with our design team now to think about, okay, how can we make this, a great place for people to age in place.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear that you're involved in that work. I think just in the light and self-interest, please continue to do more of that, because we're all going to end up somewhere, right? Eventually,
Right.
Perhaps, or many of us, yeah. Actually, Planetree does a lot of work in long-term care and has for the past 7 decades. People often ask me, so where, if you had to age somewhere, where would it be? Like, who does the best job at long-term care? And I always say the Netherlands. The Netherlands have pretty enlightened concepts about aging and aging environments. And I've seen some of the most creative approaches in that country. There's one that's pretty famous, I think it's called the Villages, that has created it's fenced in, but you wouldn't know it when you go in there, because this is for geriatric psychiatry patients. So patients with dementia and Alzheimer's who have to be in some sort of a controlled environment. However, you go into this and it's a little community, and there are neighborhoods, and the neighborhood is themed, and they'll place people in those neighborhoods based on whether they live or grew up in the country. So it's kind of the country neighborhood, or if they grew up in the urban area, it's kind of the urban neighborhood. If they were, artists or what have you, they might cluster them in sort of the artist colony within the village. They have a little grocery store, and the client can go in. They can go when a family come to visit and do a little shopping. They've got a restaurant. They've got a tavern. So you can go and have, a beer. In so many skilled nursing facilities, we just have wiped out so much of the joy of living. It almost have just hey, we're keeping you safe and alive. You should just be happy about that. But I think we all would say we're more focused on the quality than the quantity. But it's place.
It's more than just being safe.